Hello guys, UnoPro here, back with another video. This time I am commentating on some VODs from the latest Team War season. Team War Season 2 has just started, and about a day ago the first matches have happened. I'm covering a match between Memestorm, a team I've been invited to play on and will be playing on every second week due to time constraints, and JDAcademy. Now, for those unfamiliar with Team Wars, basically the format is each team normally brings a team of 6 players and will have to get one win with each faction. Now, there are a couple fill-ins, people can't always play, so you may see a couple players play more than one faction, but for the most part, it'll be one player to one faction. Now, Memestorm, as I said, I'm playing for them. Very, very strong team, a lot of well-known players who actually came second last time, so very strong team. I'll try not to have too much bias because, I have been working with these guys, but we'll try and keep it fair. Unfortunately, due to the lack of a full replay system, I cannot see the opponent's hands. I have tried to add friend requests, but the ones I've had have had out in their match history and the others haven't added me. So we will just be doing from the perspective of Team Memestorm, but I will try and keep a fresh perspective from both sides, what players might be considering. So we are ready to get underway with our... So we have Meziljie on W1R2 versus UnoPro on the Songhai. Both pretty well known players. Meziljie does a lot for the community, especially in regards to tournaments, and UnoPro is quite famous for his tournament play. Now we quickly see the mulligans over here. So we can see that UnoPro is playing a spell high deck. He has a couple early game plays, which is always nice. Those mana vortexes aren't looking to do enough in the early game. I would expect this Fae deck to be an aggressive deck. That's how Fae tends to build, and her Bloodborne spell doesn't really allow for controlling gameplay, but we could be surprised. And I think tempo cards like Phoenix Fire and Mana Vortex could be pretty good in this matchup. So we see Meziljie misses out on a 2-drop, which is pretty big in this matchup, or any matchup for an aggressive deck like Fae. And we will see the Healing Mystic, and I imagine the Chakra Avatar will come out as well. Now we will see... Okay, very aggressive start. Just choosing to cycle those mana vortexes to buff the Chakra Avatar. Based on his hand, I think Jay is realizing he doesn't have a lot of high cost spells. His hand's not very exciting, so he's happy to cycle those and just buff the Chakra Avatar for free. He doesn't have something like a Heaven's Eclipse where he'll want to save the discount mana cost. So he's happy just to throw them away, cycle and get some new cards. Now, Meziljie does have a pretty nice answer, and we do see the Cryogenesis coming out. So we'll draw a Vesper from the deck. Flash Freeze as well. Definitely suggests this is a less aggressive Fae, and maybe even on the controlling side. So we will see if, Meziljie has taken this to play cards that will work with the Bloodborne spell, or whether it's just using simply the Bloodborne spell as a condition. Now we will see a very strong play, able to go 2-3 for UnoPro, developing that Lantern Fox. So Meziljie with 6 cards in hand, definitely a little bit low on cards for UnoPro, but he does have 2 minions on board. Now a very interesting thing to note is, and this is definitely a deliberate choice by UnoPro, is that he's played the Lantern Fox in the same column as his own general, so that the enemy's Warbird hero spell, if she wants to use it, will hit the Lantern Fox. And this is very, very important, because obviously you don't want to give the Lantern Fox free cards. However, this is worse against something like Chromatic Cold, because now Chromatic Cold will now kill the minion in addition with the Bloodborne spell. Obviously UnoPro doesn't really think that's too big a problem, and I also tend to agree with that, just because the general could kill the 2-2 for free anyway. So we will see what Meziljie does. I think it's very important that these Lantern Foxes for Jay, get a decent amount of value, because otherwise his hand is looking a little bit empty. Ghost Lightning probably not going to be very good if Meziljie continues a more controlling style of gameplay. If she does have the Chromatic Cold, then she may look to play a 2-drop on the mana tile and then do that. Otherwise, she can still go for something like a 3-drop and then just Chromatic Cold and hit with a general. She doesn't need to use her Bloodborne spell. Okay, so we do see a Prismatic Illusionist, which is a pretty nice tempo swing, able to kill off that Lantern Fox, and as I said, just choosing to play that 3 mana card rather than saving yourself 2 damage with the Warbird. Tempo is very, very important against Songhai. You don't want to fall behind too far on the board early. Now, fortunately for Jay, he does have the answer to this. Okay, so he chooses to replace Ghost Lightning. He's completely fine hitting a 2-1. And he does have the perfect answer for this Prismatic Illusionist with Phoenix Fire. So, quite a nice ball swing for Jay. But he has used another card. He's traded 1-for-1 with his opponent. Now, if this Land Fox doesn't hit, and somehow the other one doesn't hit, he's starting to look a little bit lower. But I'd say he's in quite a fine position. It's quite easy to think, well, you know, Jay's been outvalued, he's 5 cards in hand to 2, but you got to remember he has 2 cards in the board, and he can keep generating more cards. So yes, if Meziljie has the answers, has the spell, then maybe she can start to generate an advantage that way, but Songhai definitely not out of gas either. So coming up on turn 5, we really could see pretty much anything from Meziljie. Dancing Blaze is a card that's seen a lot of play in the past. There's always, you know, lots of removal in Vayner. We don't really know what Meziljie is playing. It could just be a Vesper deck. We have seen Cryogenesis, which is not a card we typically see in Fade, just because she's such an aggressive character. Okay, so we'll look at the Snow Chaser that was probably generated by the Cryogenesis. So now Jay might look to start to move forward to the enemy side of the board to make sure that Snow Chaser won't be able to continue to be effective. Okay, so Jay not valuing his life at all, and there's really no reason for him to be able to. Well, no reason for him to, because so he's still at 20 health, he's the aggressor, and that 1 health, there's a small chance it might be relevant on the Lantern Fox. Now, that is a pretty good draw. Heaven's Eclipse will be able to refill his hand quite a lot, as well as these 2 Lantern Foxes. So he's got a massive tempo advantage, and he has options to refill his hand. I think this game will really come down to if Jay can, you know, draw, if he can keep drawing gas and not lose his tempo by having to play that Heaven's Eclipse. Now, it will be interesting as we see the deck develop, why the choice of Fae was had over Kara's Blood Bomb ability, which definitely works better in late game decks. One reason for this maybe it might be quite spell heavy deck. We did see the Arcanists, so it does imply a lot of spells, which is probably the main reason I would say, just because you're not going to have a lot of minions in hand to get the buff. And it can allow you to race more aggressive decks if you do get off to a good start. So we will see what will happen here. Okay, so it does look like it's committing fully to an Arcanist Vayner deck. We will see a pretty nice tempo swing on the board here. Alright, so that Lantern Fox was dispelled, so that's why Phoenix Fire did not come to the hand. But another thing to note, we also haven't really seen a lot of good Phoenix Fire targets. So yeah, sure, it can pressure the life total, but if you can't kill them, you're going to lose ball control pretty fast. Now, Jay is stuck in a pretty tough decision here. Suddenly the board has turned. Letting our Beast Sage live is definitely very, very dangerous, but he has no way to kill it in hand. And he also has this, you know, value versus tempo question in mind. Does he go for the Heavenly Eclipse or the Lantern Fox? The Lantern Fox is slower to develop, and he decides he needs the cards, which is, you know, quite interesting. Definitely looks like he's now in a position where he needs to start going to phase. That Beast Sage is quickly going to take ball control over, but he does have that spiral technique, so Meziljie definitely needs an answer. Maybe running healing, maybe even running, you know, polarity. After bunching can buff a ton of spells, there is potential for kill potential very fast with a live L-Beast. We will see how it goes. Okay, so Sunseer. So there is some healing, but it's not guaranteed. Okay, that is quite big. Basically, if that died, if that lived it was basically game over. Alright. So, we see that these Arcanists are getting buffed up quite a lot, and threatening to generate a ton of value. Now, he's 1 damage off lethal with his spiral technique. Unfortunately, no minions on board, otherwise it would simply be juxtaposition. Interesting choice to get rid of the Lantern Fox. I think the idea is just that he needs this fire starter, and he definitely needs to Onyx Bear Seal. So he wants to use his mana efficiently. and develop his threats. And Land Fox, is possibly just a turn too slow. Next turn, he really needs to try and put himself in a position to kill his opponent with Spiral Technique, which Land Fox may very well not be able to do. So, interesting choices here. He has a small, well, not an insignificant chance, if he plays the Fire Starter here, to not be able to hit face after he Bear Seals, which I imagine he will do. It may even involve juxtapositioning to get another one, because he wants to set up for that lethal. So we will see if he chooses to set up for that lethal, but it's important to remember Sunseer is also in position here. Okay, so he chooses the Sunseer. Very understandable choice. He's definitely in a position where he needs to burst down his opponent. Okay, I imagine we're going to see the juxtaposition here, able to hit his opponent's general for 3 damage. Very, very strong play. Now with that Spiral Tech in hand, Meziljie definitely needs an answer or a way to kill NoHJ. It's not impossible. If she is running Polarity, 2 more spells, and a way to get to the general can be lethal. So we will see. Meziljie definitely needs some kind of healing, and even more potentially. Just because she has this to answer, she needs to be able to block off her general to make it 10 damage. It'll be interesting to see what can be done here. Okay, a copy of a recent spell. The most recent cast spell was Juxtaposition. And this could spell very, very bad news, because now that the Owl Beast Sage can get in range, I wonder if we will see a Polarity or some other form of damage. And there's the Polarity. So it actually gets the +2 buff first, goes up to 12 damage. Now, surprise lethal out of nowhere. Definitely wasn't impossible otherwise. I imagine the deck is running some to get those Owl Beasts in range. Then you play a bunch of spells, Polarity, and you suddenly hitting for opponents for a lot of damage. So very interesting choice, and I think we kind of saw why Faye was the hero there. Obviously you're not going to always be able to do 25 damage with the Owl Beast Sage, so Faye gives you a little bit of chip damage and occasional board control that can help you stall out and get your opponent to a killable life total. Now there was a way that Jay could have avoided that, but it's definitely not an easy call. Giving his opponent a potential Onyx Bear Seal would have let him live, and probably in hindsight was the better play, because playing that Juxtaposition second allowed his opponent to steal it. Now he might have wanted to protect his Fire Starter, but he basically has the lethal through that play, so I think that might have been avoidable, but not a deck you expect, not a deck that's within the meta very much whatsoever. So we do have our graphic going, so that's the first game, so Vayno's out of the way. Vayno is probably a mid-tier faction, and Songhai is probably closer to the bottom in the current state of things, so not the worst thing for Team Memestorm to lose with the Songhai there. Okay, so we will just load into the next game. Let's quickly get it up. Okay. Here we go. So it is Tsunja Gangster, or Jot as he seems to be known, versus Lu Vayne. So the Songhai Abyssian matchup this time. It will be interesting to see what type of Songhai will be. I imagine it will be a fairly spell high based deck. That tends to be the way to go with Kalios. Not much more to see. Sometimes you see more minion heavy versions, but yeah, it tends to be pretty spell based. What we can see is a late game Shadow Nova deck, but with, I would say this is probably one of the early anti-aggro variations. These are Rocky Headhunters. These Dancing Blades can really contest the board early and help Kasiva get to that late game hero power and Shadow Nova. So for those unfamiliar with Kasiva, deals 1 damage to a minion with a Bloodborne spell, and if that minion dies, it turns into Shadow Creep. Basically the plan is to get a bunch of those and create a Shadow Nova. So we will see that the Chakra avatar has been brought in. Getting bumped up for a bunch of damage, very little consideration of his card pool, going very hard for that early damage, even going with the inner focus, all that kind of stuff. So he's down to 2 cards in hand, but what he's basically done is he's made his opponent have an answer, and in Abyssian that answer is not common at all. There are very few cards that can, very few early game removal cards within Abyssian, and so basically he's put himself in position to do a ton of damage early game if that 5/4 can live. However, if Abyssian can deal with that without taking too much more damage, then he's going to be up on cards quite a lot. Interesting choice with the Spell Gem here, allowing it to get backstab for free by the Kaido Assassin. We will see if this is something that Sunjin Gangster wants to do, because it doesn't automatically kill it, so it's not the end of the world. And as we do see, he chooses to backstab. Okay, so possibly would have been better to play the 2-4 down here, because now it can only backstab that, which you might not want to do. And we do see a ton of damage coming in early. And a lack of cards being played means that Sunjin Gangster's back at 4 cards. So he is able to use the Dispel that will kill off the Chakra Avatar, using that Bloodborne spell on the Kaido Assassin, playing very fast, able to trade in both minions, I imagine. Okay, so now we're in an interesting situation where that board advantage early on from the Songhai has basically been traded in for damage. Now, if Sunjin Gangster is not able to push out that final bit of damage, he has lost board control. He is an early game deck versus a more late game deck. This game could quickly get away from him if he's not able to close it out. We do see an inner focus that represents another 3 plus the 1 from the rush minion, putting his opponent down to 4, but only 2 cards in hand. We're not sure if Louvain is running any kind of healing. Even the Saber Spine, putting his opponent, well, he's basically killed his opponent. Very fast start, and good read from Sunjin Gangster to realize that even though he used a lot of resources early, having that 5-starter plus inner focus is a lot of potential damage. However, if he wasn't able to kill his opponent this turn, and Louvain was running healing, definitely not an ideal. And he was at 15 himself, so it definitely wasn't clear, but he was fortunate enough to get the win in the end. So we will see a quick 2-0 lead by JDAcademy, getting a win with that Songhai. Winning the Songhai and Vayne up early is always pretty good, because it means that your Xerix and Arjun still haven't even been used, 2 very strong factions, as well as Lilith. So really Magma is the only difficult one that I would imagine in this current meta that they have left on the team. So let me just get up the game again. And we will find it quickly. Just 1 second, folks. I do apologize. Unfortunately, this is the best system we have at the moment. Okay, so our next game will be Abyssian versus Abyssian Louvain up again versus Le Tigris. Alright, so we do see Louvain's hand. Very interesting hand. Looks like a lot more controlling than we thought. With the Sunset Paragon, definitely quite an anti-aggro deck, but also with some Shadow Creep synergy and the healing that we did talk about last game, that could have came in pretty clutch, but we didn't get a chance to see it. So yep, definitely pretty standard choices there. Possibly could have gotten rid of the Emerald Rejuvenator. Not really that important in the current matchup, just because it's quite late game focused. But Sunset Paragon's pretty bad as well, so not too much of a question there. Now, something interesting that we will see is whether Louvain chooses to keep the Shadow Nova. This is quite a late game matchup. Both decks are designed to deal with early aggression while trying to get to the late game, but when both decks are doing that, maybe one can pull ahead, because they might be running a pretty similar list, and oftentimes the mirror matches can snowball pretty hard. So does choose to keep the Shadow Nova for now, playing to that late game. Okay, so something interesting to talk about here was the positioning of those 2 minions. It was pretty obvious he was going to play them there, but he had the option was whether or not Louvain wanted to play the Healing Mystic in the center tile. Now this does a couple things. It means that on board, the Iraqi Headhunter is safe from attacks, because the General is blocked off by the Healing Mystic. It also denies the middle mana tile. What this does mean, though, is that on board is a representation of a threat to ramp out to 5 mana because of this Healing Mystic. If this Healing Mystic comes into attack, then it's blocking off the General, and vice versa. So it's choosing whether to have the onboard protection of the Iraqi Hunter versus the onboard threat of the 5 mana minion. It's definitely something to consider. Obviously, other cards can affect these players like it did, but interesting choice there, because I think with only a 4 mana card, 4 mana cards in hand, and Bloodborne spell not available the next turn, having that extra mana isn't too useful. But, you know, it turned out pretty similar. I don't think it really would have mattered considering that the Primus Fist came out. Alright, so I wonder if the Demonic Law will go. I wouldn't have been surprised to, just because it is a value game. Demonic Law is definitely not a value card, but we will see there is potential for players to, you know, really rush down their opponents within this matchup, though a little bit unlikely. Now, I imagine the play will definitely be a Dialysis this game, this turn, unless his opponent wants to go for a tempo play with Spelljammer. And okay, so he decides that clearing the board currently is pretty important, and he wants to put himself in a position where he's ahead on board. An interesting choice, but I don't know if I can fault that choice. I think personally I prefer the Dialysis there. There's very few buff cards within Abyssian, so I'm not sure you get punished too often. Though I do like the position of the Spelljammer. Spelljammer in a mirror match is not a card you want to position defensively whatsoever. You want to create this situation where you attack into the Spelljammer, so that, you know, if your opponent wants to kill it with their general, then, you know, they miss out on a card. You've got one card advantage from it, and if they leave it, then you still have that Spelljammer up to attack again, or to draw you more cards. I would not be surprised to see Tigris, I don't really know how to say this name, attack into the Spelljammer. It's definitely a play I really like, because it puts in an awkward situation. First, you're going to be equal on cards, but now your opponent can't attack with it if they want to draw a card themselves, which will put you at card parity, but, you know, you've taken 4 damage from it, and you haven't really lost anything. So I think we will see the attack there. It will be also an interesting decision if the Bloodborne spell is used. I think it will depend heavily on the hand composition. If there was a really strong 5-drop that was definitely going to get played, then I think you could justify it because you don't want to waste it. But there's basically very little reason. You really want to get those Shadow Creeps out early because it's going to be a massive disadvantage. And if you have Shadow Creep out, I don't believe that your opponent can over Shadow Creep it. I might be wrong on that. But yeah, definitely in this matchup, it's going to be a lot about the Shadow Novas who can generate that creep. Okay, so Louvain, choosing not to be greedy with the cards, could have considered leaving the Primus alive and leaving the Spelljammer alive to draw an extra card, but with 5 cards in hand, pretty value generating cards, there's really no need to, so happy to take that trade and develop a Dancing Blades. Unfortunately, because of the positioning of the Primus Shieldmaster, Tigris has the ability to run away and avoid all hits from the Dancing Blade, but choosing not to do so. Quite an interesting decision. I'm not really sure what could it be. Okay, Dancing Blades, that definitely makes sense. What this does unfortunately mean for the Tigris is that she, I really don't know the gender of, but I'll use the general genders. She will not, you know, be able to use her Bloodborne spell this turn, which Inkseever in a late game focused deck is definitely quite unfortunate. She missed it on turn 4 and 5. Now we will see Louvain needs to use it in order to not have missed one themselves. And there is definitely potential to kill the minion with the 4/1 plus the general. So definitely a good trade. The Dancing Blades, basically the trade into the opponent's Dancing Blade after the Dancing Blades had already generated value. Very interesting choice. You're able to get more damage with the Sunset Paragon to use the Dancing Blades instead. Didn't have a lot else to develop, so definitely a good choice. Now I can heal off the general and generate a Shadow Creep. So the board advantage and the health advantage remains slightly in Louvain's favour, and we are tied on Shadow Creep. Now the Tigris can use her Bloodborne spell for the first time to generate a creep. Coming into turn 7, next turn, we need to start looking out for those Shadow Novas. So looking at probably a 6 damage Shadow Nova potentially for the Tigris next turn, something that Louvain needs to be very cautious of, and we already have that guaranteed Shadow Nova of at least 5 damage for Louvain next turn. Okay, so it looks like we will be using the Bloodborne spell. Okay, does he have a 4-drop to continue to develop? Fortunately, because of that blood tier, he was able to avoid some damage. Okay, so something that I think, if you're going to commit to that plan of using that blood tier, then, and you're letting your opponent kill off the blood tier for free, then I think it's definitely a good idea simply to play the blood tier to block off. You're letting your opponent kill it anyway. It can be awkward because they both have Shadow Nova, but I think that 2 damage is very, very irrelevant, and so definitely something worth considering. Now, there's a couple of interesting choices here for Latigas regardless of what's in hand. There is the possibility to move to this space here, allowing any Shadow Nova that comes down to only add 2 Shadow Creep to the board. This would make it only 7 damage, so it would live, but would also need a minion to block off. So a couple of minions here and here could do the trick, but quite a tricky situation. So we will see that come down. Unfortunately, because of the way this has been positioned, it can now add 3 damage because it is not on not on this square basically. So we will see the Shadow Creep down. So if another Shadow Nova comes down, then it will be able to deal 7 damage plus 2 from the general. And I was wrong about that interaction. I do apologize. I don't play Cassiva. The Shadow Creep can override the other Shadow Creep. So definitely something to consider in this matchup for the future is playing Shadow Nova first worse. Now, as I say that, the replace comes in. Louvain will get that guaranteed lethal with the Shadow Nova number 2. Able to play it on this square here to gain 3 additional damage plus a hit from the general will seal the game. So having moved the general here would have also been lethal, and moving the general here would have also been lethal. So Latigas definitely didn't misplay without moving back. Possibly moving here was the same damage, but there's definitely no need to. Thinking about the Emerald Rejuvenator, has it been missed by Louvain? Possibly. We will see. Unless I am possibly missing something, but I don't believe I am. So we will see the missed lethal, but healing up and still in a very strong position, not in range to die to a second Shadow Nova. But definitely interesting to note there that, you know, here's 2 damage and here was 4 damage from Shadow Nova, but being in range of the general. So I guess the idea is that you want to be a little bit closer to the general anyway, unless you're worried. If you're worried about a second Shadow Nova, then there's no point. You might as well be closer and give yourself a chance to win with another Shadow Nova. Definitely an interesting, potential play. Now Latigas running in closer to the opponent's minion again, choosing not to dodge that free damage. We will see what is played here. Now if a Shadow Nova comes down here, it will be overlapping a fair bit with, only really with one. Okay, so removing that Emerald Rejuvenator. Okay, but has put herself in range of that Spelljammer. Interesting decision. It was possible. I believe she was here. So you could have played the Repulsive Beast. Okay, so the Demonic Law will come out. So that all makes sense. Clearing off the opponent's board, the 2 Demonic Law, and developing a big threat, which Louvain is in range of if nothing is done about it. But now, with the Shadow Nova in hand, it should be game over. Well, no, now it is not game over because Latigas has moved up and is no longer in range of the general. This is quite big here. So we will see. Definitely options. Demonic Law can deal with this 11 on 11. We have Darkspine Elemental. Shadow Nova currently only going to do, it will do 7 damage if played there, if I counted correctly. 1 damage off lethal with Saber Spine in hand. So even though lethal was missed with Shadow Nova before, definitely still in a position where the game can be closed out pretty reliably next turn, as long as there is no healing from Latigas. And that Spectral Revenant is also a huge draw, definitely going to help end out the game, even through an Emerald Rejuvenator. So we will see. And we've definitely seen the dynamic of Shadow Creep overruling the other Shadow Creep, where, I think they both, yes, they both cast 2 Shadow Novas, I believe. And we see one general with 6 and one with 3. So very interesting. Another Shadow Nova comes out. That's going to deal 7 damage, put your opponent down to 6. But as we can see in the hand, I don't think lethal will be missed this time. And Latigas will lose this very, very interesting Cassiva matchup. Definitely something I'd like to see more of. See how that Shadow Nova dynamic plays out. It may just unfortunately be a matter of who draws more Shadow Novas. But as we saw, that potential for Shadow Nova to override another Shadow Nova is definitely something that needs to be kept in mind. Okay, so Spectral Revenant will come down and we will see the win for Louvain. Okay, so Memestorm now on the board. I will update the score. I do apologise for not doing that earlier. Okay, so 1-2. We do see the first win from Memestorm. I will just quickly get up the next game for you guys. Okay, so very, very interesting game. Interesting that both teams are choosing not to bring Lilith and choosing Cassiva instead. Lilith has definitely been the more popular general for Abyssian lately. With that Black Souls, with that really reliable Deathwatch synergy. Very, very, very surprised that that wasn't brought in by either deck. Probably just a matter of personal preference, or possibly, you know, a concession to an aggro metagame and trying to build those Cassiva decks with those Iraqi Headhunters, Dancing Blades, really trying to beat aggro decks by getting to late game, and then, you know, a turn 7 Shadow Nova can do a lot of work against an aggro deck who's often going to be playing quite aggressively. So, next game, it is the Magma of NoHJ versus the Lioner of Can Mortella. Now, we do see one of the alternate generals again. We do see Starhorn Seeker, I believe his name is, with that draw a card power, and we do see a mech deck. Now, this is probably the best deck in the game for mech synergy because of that hero power, able to draw so many more cards, get you to that Mechazor faster. And Magma has Vindicator, which is a very, very powerful tool that can give Mechazor rush pretty reliably. And that's what makes this a very viable mech deck. Now we do see the strategy. Going for an early Mechazor against Lioner, replacing all those cards that aren't mechs basically. Now, interesting decision here. I imagine we will see the Wings of Mechazor into a Helm of Mechazor. Yep, as we do. Definitely the most mana efficient play. Threatening to ramp up straight into 4 mana next turn. Being able to play a 4-drop. And we do sell a Silhouette Tracer. Very, very interesting. Not something we see a lot of in Magma, especially a Magma. This could be a number of things. It could be maybe there's a Twin Fan in the deck or some kind of artifact. Or it could also just be kind of like a stalling tool. It is a possibility that, you know, aggro Magma will pressure down the opponent, get them to run backwards, and now suddenly you can Silhouette Tracer. You've bought yourself maybe 3 turns. Maybe that's some of the logic behind it. Because when you can push your opponent into a corner, and then you can Silhouette Tracer, you can move 2 spaces back, you can keep your distance for a very, very long time. Which may be some of the logic. So we see once again, just replacing those late game cards, he definitely wants to get that early Mechazor. Okay, so this Silverguard Knight is looking to trade pretty well with NoHJ's board. He can just trade in with the General and this. And then I imagine we'll see the Iraqi Headhunter and the Helm of Mechazor. It will be interesting position. Looks like we're going for quite aggressive positioning. We will see. Choosing to block off the Manatile. I imagine he will do the same with the Helm of Mechazor, unless he wants to be a little bit more greedy with it and keep it out of range of the General. But no, we do see stopping that mana is very, very important. And NoHJ trying really hard to keep up that tempo advantage. Now we do see he's at 60% progress. Lioner does have an in-faction answer that's pretty common in the form of Sunbloom, but that will only silence the Mechazor. And this early on into the game, an 8-8 is still a very, very strong stat line. So possibly looking for something like Sunbloom plus a Martin. But the thing is, we saw some late game in NoHJ's deck. Simply killing the Mechazor is not a guaranteed win. Sometimes, if your opponent plays very aggressively, running out of cards, going all in on that Mechazor, then sometimes just simply having an answer for the Mechazor will seal the game. But it does not look like this will be the case for this game. Now we do see a nice play. Lioner gains that board tempo, able to take off a mana tile and basically stop a ramp into 5 mana from his opponent. But that Bloodborne spell is now in effect. Only 1 mech off having that Mechazor will be interesting. I'm quite surprised by that, but I guess he could probably still go for it, and we'll go for the Blood Tier on here and then draw a card. I think this is very solid reasoning. The only way this could have been done different was playing the first sword of the Mechazor straight onto the Manatile, and that way if you draw another Helm of the Mechazor, then you can actually play Meziljie that turn because you'll have 1 mana left over. Though I'm not sure, he may have already used... No, he's definitely not used 3, he's used 2, so if he drew that last one, then he would have been able to play Meziljie that turn. Not necessarily something he wants to do. If he does feel like his opponent can beat him after a destroyed Meziljie, he may choose to wait for that Vindicator, but we will see. But we do see the very, very important 5th mech. No way Vindicator can be used to charge Meziljie next turn, but it will be interesting. I imagine he will still go for it, especially if he doesn't have a good play in hand. Yeah, so I imagine the Silhouette Tracer will be coming into the replace circle this turn, and imagine a Meziljie is probably going to get dropped. Only Sunbloom plus Martyrdom really punishes it, though his opponent is at 20 health, so he does have time to deal with Meziljie. He also needs to be quite careful where he places it. If he places the Meziljie in a corner and it gets Sunbloomed, suddenly that's an 8/8 that's fairly irrelevant if he gets dispelled. So choosing to keep some range will be interesting. So we do see there is a Twin Fan in the deck, and he actually chose to keep the Silhouette Tracer, which is quite surprising, but is definitely going to pay off now that Twin Fang has come into the hand. So possibly a little bit weak to Sunbloom here, but he wants to keep this sort of Meziljie alive because, you know, that Frenzy is very, very strong ability. And we do see no answer to Meziljie in all these turns. Out of 10 cards, probably 15 if you count the mulligans. We haven't seen, well, probably more if you count replaces actually. We haven't seen any Sunbloom. Now we don't know how aggressively he's been playing for the Sunbloom. Choosing to instead pressure his opponent and try and kill him on the following turn. But this unfortunately means that, you know, even just considering the board, there's a very, very nice trade here with Meziljie into the Elix, and then Sword of Meziljie can come down and do some damage. There's definitely potential for a lot of damage this turn. Is there an efficient way? So there is Mecantor into there, Sword of Meziljie in, and then you can even bring the Meziljie to Frenzy. So that is a lot of damage. How much would that be? That would be 14, 12, 14 damage, I believe. Quite a lot. But he does draw the Egmorph with that hero ability, allowing, you know, 2 frenzies to happen. He only needs 1, but he's going to be able to put down his opponent to 5 health if he wants, with that Mecantor in hand. Now suddenly a very, very good position. Now there was definitely room for Lion Knight to take over the game in this one if he had the Sunbloom, but unfortunately after all this time either didn't draw one or didn't decide to keep one. And that's something, that's definitely a risk. If you're playing Meziljie without a Vindicator, that means that, you know, you still need to be able to pressure out your opponent. Without Meziljie, a mech deck is inherently a lot weaker because you're playing understated minions that don't really affect the board too much later on in the game. If that Sunbloom came out, now Lion Knight can run 2 space backwards. It could be about 3 turns before that Meziljie may even hit anything. Okay, so we see the Repulsor Beast, but still no silence, so he will need a Sunbloom. Oh, Decimate, very nice, very, very nice. Now Lion Knight able to clear that board. Unfortunately, that was basically as good as it can get, but the Mecantor will set up a lethal, able to come in, hit the general for 4, as well as clearing the path. And we will see NoHJ take the game with a Mech Magmar deck. Quite an interesting game, especially for a Magmar deck. Unfortunately, no answer for Lion Knight. But yeah, definitely an interesting deck. We don't see a lot of Twin Fang, a lot of Silhouette Tracer decks traditionally, but Jay definitely mixing things up quite a bit. I will update that score for you guys. So we are back to 2-2, 4 games now. And also very, very good. I definitely think Arjun is definitely one of the top decks in the meta. And to be able to beat that with Vath, who's, well, not Vath, with Magmar, sorry, who's definitely one of the weaker factions at the moment. That's definitely very strong. Have that Magmar out of the way, because Magmar can definitely be weak. It tends to be, when the control decks versions are played, definitely a very weak early game, and plus, you know, a mech deck is never going to be overly consistent. So definitely nice to see if you're barracking for Team Memestorm. Okay, we will get up our next game. There we go. Alright, into our next game we have Meziljie on Vitruvian versus Meziljie once again on the liner, choosing to have another go. Now we do see Xerix coming out of Meziljie, basically the only choice for any serious Vitruvian player at the moment, unfortunately. Just such a strong Bloodborne spell, arguably the most powerful deck in the game. And we do see a very nice hand for Meziljie, able to play that Obelisk on turn 1, immediately start generating value, possibly getting rid of the Healing Mystic even. It's definitely a very all-in on the early game, because these cards aren't going to generate a lot of value. They will eventually lose a card value exchange, but choosing to keep all these 2-drops, wanting to flood the board early, and really just outpace this liner. Now, Dunecaster is a very strong card that came a lot better once the Bloodborne spell came in for Xerix, able to create threats very easily. Will we see a Sunbloom? So there is the Sunbloom. So it does look like it has them in the deck. Unfortunate for Liner, was not able to draw them last game, but able to deal with that Obelisk pretty effectively on turn 1. That's basically going to be useless. And Meziljie basically sees he's now behind on board. Keeping second wish when you're behind on board is always, a little bit iffy, because the chances that you're attacking with a minion have suddenly gotten a lot lower. He's also got a lot of trouble answering this Wingblade Knight, or playing any minion that's not on this back row here will be able to get hit by this Wingblade Adept and killed for free, which is very unfortunate for Meziljie. But he does have the option to go 2-drops this turn, choosing to go for a 2-drop plus First Wish, I imagine. Perfectly fine. Playing a 2-drop onto one of these is, basically just letting it die to the Wingblade Adept. This way, he's making a conscious decision. I'm going to take 8 damage from this Wingblade Adept, but I'm going to clear it for free. And he is definitely the more aggressive deck in the matchup. Unless we see cards like Dominate will come out early, or a lot of early aggression from Liner, he's looking to pressure and out-tempo the board. So I definitely like this play, using his health as a resource, and also, fortunate for him, no threat of ramping into 5 mana. So no need to stop that, because ramping into 5 mana is definitely something Liner really wants to do because of strong 5 mana cards, namely Ironcliff Guardian. Okay, interesting choice here. Choosing to miss out on some damage with the Wingblade Adept to stop his opponent from ramping to 5 easily. It basically means that the Healing Mystic will have to go into it, which is perfectly fine, because then he could possibly kill it next turn. So the Owlbeast Sage is definitely a must-answer threat. There is quite a few ways you could do this. The Bloodborne spell, definitely going to come into a lot of them. You can Bloodborne spell, Primus Fisted, you can use Dunecaster, you can even do this and the General. Lots of different plays here, but definitely looking to clear the board, I imagine. Unfortunately, not a lot of great attacks for this Healing Mystic 3/4. It can probably just end up attacking into the General or the 2/1, but definitely wants to keep it as a threat. So this is the only spot that would stop him from killing the 4/4. Okay, interesting decision. I think I personally just like playing the Fireblaze Obelisk. These Obelisks are really good once they're going, but the later on in the game, the more awkward they become to develop. And I don't think you really care about your health total if you're Vitruvian in this matchup, especially not with that Amaya healer, a Sunbloom already out, possibly going to bait another one, the Obelisk. I think I prefer just developing that Obelisk there. It does mean you would trade the 3/4 into the 2/1, but I don't think you really care too much about taking that damage. And you can even play the Obelisk in the middle to protect it, potentially. Okay, so 1 turn before Holy Immolation, so this position is perfectly fine, and already, already a decent diagonal. So Ironcliff is a card that's probably on the mind of Meziljie at this point. However, there's not a ton of great places for it, and this 3/4 will trade into it pretty well. So Ironcliff could come down here, may come down onto the mana tile. I also don't mind that, because we do see Dancing Blaze, which will affect the board immediately instead, which I think is perfectly fine. Now, no second wish. Second wish should be very strong here, but we do see the double Obelisk, which can generate a lot of value. So choosing to deny that mana tile but he goes straight for the Amaya instead. Not worry about developing these obelisks later into the turn. Part of the logic may be that he is ahead on board, his opponent should be answering his threats, and that he'll have time to play them later onto a semi-empty board anyway. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, his hand is not too aggressive for his sake. On board, we could see a clear simply with Raw plus killing the 3-2, but that would take 8 damage. Now, 10 health is not a lot, but it's not the, it's not the worst if you're a liner with those big provokes. And there's definitely the threat of, suddenly Raw plus an Ironcliff Guardian comes down. You've cleared their board, you're at 10 health with a provoke in their face and a 6-1. That's a very, very threatening situation. And as we see, if there was a Divine Bond as well, suddenly, Meziljie is just dead. Fortunately for Meziljie, there is no Ironcliff Guardian, and Ken might have to be a little bit inefficient with his mana, but still a similar principle. So we will see if he'll move up kill. With this Zeal, in fact, he probably will end up just staying. We will see. 2 mana. He may have a 2-drop as well, which would be very, very strong. Unfortunately not. Okay, he's really valuing his health total here, choosing not to attack. Now, I'm really not too sure about this. What it does mean is the Silverguard Knight now dies for free, so you've given up your board control. And if we're assuming there's no Dispel coming out, then that provoke is effectively your life anyway, so you should do it and keep that life as a minion if you can. Now, we do see the Dispels in hand. I still think I prefer it slightly because a lot of the damage from Vitruvian is out of hand. Now, if you take 3 damage just from the minion, that's 3 damage, okay? You've had that 3 damage from a minion. But if all the damage is coming to the board, then that 3 damage may have become 4 damage if your opponent has to deal with that Silverguard Knight, and it may not be able to deal with it efficiently. So by trading in there, if you're counting your minion provoke as your own life, which you possibly can, if you're not afraid to be dying, it's definitely a possibility to get you more health and more board control. I think it's a risk that you possibly need to take. He chooses not to, but we do see that a Punisher is able to come out with the Fireblaze Obelisk, the Dunecaster, and basically all the damage was through minions anyway, so killing that 3-2 was probably just the same, though there may have been potential death with Siphon Energy. So definitely not a clear play. I'm not saying it was the wrong play whatsoever. I'm just saying that sometimes you need to go for board control, even at the cost of your life, if you're getting a bit low, especially when you can play provokes, which can act as Persuado life. Okay, so we will see 7 mana, very, very difficult board to deal with. We do see an Obelisk in hand, an Obelisk in hand and an Obelisk on the board. Definitely a lot of damage, threatening it with that Rush as Cursed, Primus Fist, lots of potential, and even able to deal with a provoke. Unfortunately, no provoke for this Arcanist Slayer, and that is one of the weaknesses of Arcanist Slayer. There's less beefier minions on their own. You need that spell synergy, and this will likely just end up dying to free to a Dervish, even possibly the one on the board. Okay, so we see a very desperate all-in play, making that 14-8. It is even dead to what's on board, but there's also a lot of potential damage. Let's take a quick look at the damage. That's 3, 6, 9, 11, plus 13 because you can dispel and then trade in. So that will be lethal for Meziljie. I do not imagine he will miss this. And it looks like he will see it. So that will be a quick win. Those obelisks able to gain a lot of value, really overloading his opponent with the dispel threats. We saw the first Sunbloom come out on just the 2 mana obelisk, and then Amaya Healer was able to get its Dying Wish off as well as the Fireblaze Obelisk, which is really something that Vitruvian can do very, very well, and that is running a lot of dispel. Run your opponent with a spell, and just like that, we do see that Memestorm takes the lead, 3-2. A very nice comeback so far. No real surprises to see Xerix winning. It is a very, very strong faction. Probably the strongest deck in the game. I think most people would agree with that. So we will get into our next game. all ready to go. So we do see Meziljie back on it again with that liner versus Hey Yo Adrian on a Starhorn deck. Now we did see a Starhorn played by Jay earlier. I imagine this will probably be a similar deck. It may not be a mech deck, there's a small chance, but I definitely imagine it will be some form of aggro magma. So pretty nice start here from Wingblade Adept. And also Meziljie has a lot of follow-up in hand. Sojourner possibly not needed, just because it is a very aggressive matchup. That card draw is a lot less important. Arclight Regalia also can be pretty good if you get ahead on board, which early Wingblade Adepts can definitely do. And it's definitely a lot more effective against Starhorn the Seeker compared to Vath, just because that hero power basically can negate one Regalia. So we do see that it is an aggro magma. We're still not sure if it is a mech deck. But already we see a couple of cards that aren't within, that we haven't seen in other mech decks. So it definitely means if he is running a mech deck, there's a lot less late game. With Jay, we saw Silthar Elders, Silhouette Traces, all that kind of jazz. It may just simply be a very aggressive face magma. Now Jay is left with an interesting decision. There is possibility to go for the Arclight Regalia, though I do doubt that will be the play. So it looks like he'll go for the 2 into 3. Yep, so choosing to provoke. Another option was simply to kill the 2-3 with the Wingblade Adept, trade in, and then kill the 3-1. But that's only developing 1 minion. This way he gets to develop 2 minions and get even further ahead on board. Okay, so we do see that it is a mech deck, as was pretty expected, and we do see a very interesting card out of Jay, Cyril the Exile. Not a card we see quite a lot. Range, and will pull a minion damaged by him in front. Now, this can even answer stuff like Mechazor itself, and can also bring opponents who try to play these tricky minions that generate like lots of long-term value, such as Shadow Dancers, Four Winds Magi. Now it's bringing you into a bunch of strong Lioneye minions, which Lioneye is known for having a lot of big minions, and if they can always be in range, which Cyril can apply, it definitely is pretty strong. But we do see that Meziljie is in a very, very strong spot. It does have the option of Arclight Regalia this turn, simply put on the damage, and on board only represents the destruction of 1 charge, and definitely can put on a plan of just developing a lot of damage. Choosing to buff the Cyril, definitely a good choice. Now we'll trade into this for free, and able to put some more damage on his opponent. Because his opponent, his early aggression was stopped pretty hard, he's able to even take the 2 damage on his general instead of the Healing Mystic, really pressuring his opponent down. We will see the Cannon Mechs are able to get 1 hit off, but this Cyril is going to start getting a lot of value, basically killing minions for free if nothing is done about it. And already, Hey Yo Adrian at 15 health, when he is meant to be the aggressive deck, suddenly those cards like Flameblood Warlock are a lot worse. So we do see the free kill on the 2-1. Choosing not to move the 2-2, very, very questionable. Now the Healing Mystic will be able to kill it for free. I'm not really sure about the reasoning there. It may have just been an oversight. Okay, so we can kill off both range units, only at 60%. There's potential for next turn, but also unlikely. So Ironcliff can get dropped right in his opponent's face, and definitely looking very, very strong for Meziljie. So does choose to clear off both minions, both ranged minions of his opponent, and then dropping the Ironcliff, representing a lot of damage, and still 2 minions needed for Mechazor, plus he really does need to deal with this Ironcliff Guardian. That Sunbloom in hand is also going to be very, very good against a non-rushed Mechazor, which is pretty hard for Hey Yo Adrian to do at this point, because he basically needs a perfect hand of of Vindicator, the 1-4 mech, and the 2-2 mech, or 2 1-1s. Okay, so we will see an Earth Sphere. Very interesting choice for a deck with Flameblood Warlock. I think the idea there is simply just being able to not care about your health at all, hit every turn, and not worry. But we will see no Mechazor coming out and no answer to that Ironcliff. That's already at least 7, 10, 12 damage on board, 14 with Regalia, definitely pressuring that life total, and Cyril is going to continue to generate value. possibly will die to this Wings of Mechazor, but I'm not sure Meziljie cares at this point. So much damage, no answer to Iron Cliff, and he really, as long as he's not worried about dying, which is basically no way he can, in a very, very strong position. We really need to see something like an Egg Morph come out. Even then, I think it might be a little bit too late. This one is looking pretty over. If he is able to pull off a Vindicator Rush Mechazor turn, maybe that is the potential answer, but already then that's looking a little bit clunky. We will see. Hey Yo Adrian also short on cards, definitely losing his value game hard, and it's definitely something that Lionheart excels at, is really punishing early aggro decks. They really need a lot of start, they need to be able to generate constant value, and be able to always be prepared for Lionheart simply drop a 310 in their face and stop all of their aggression. So, Hey Yo Adrian definitely looking for any possible out here. It's looking very, very hard to imagine. Basically, the only things possible is Vindicator, you know, Wings of Mechazor. Mechazor comes in and clears off, you know, these two. You're still looking at least 6 damage. Definitely not a great situation. Plus, your Mechazor is only going to be at 2 health, so that's your win condition potentially gone as well. So, not even that. That would have possibly given him a fighting chance. Now he's definitely in a lot of trouble. We do see already 6 damage on the board. Plus we see that Tiger in hand, that's another 9, and that will put him up to 11. But forgive me, there is a Holy Immolation in hand, so that will be lethal. As we will see, Meziljie does not mess around, he spots it immediately, and he will finish off the game, taking off another game. Meziljie 2-0 in a row. Very, very impressive stuff. And the Saber Stone finally comes down, and that will be the game. Okay, so as I talked about, I do believe Argent and Xerus are probably the strongest decks in the format. Lilith is up there as well, but both decks getting pretty convincing wins with Meziljie. And that Magmar deck, we saw what happens when the mech deck, draws well and is able to get early Mechazor out. But we also saw what happens when it doesn't. So we will get into the next game. Okay. I will just quickly also update that score. So yeah guys, I do apologize for the delays in between the games. It's basically going into the match history. Plus I also have to worry about you guys seeing the result, which is unfortunate. But we are nearly ready to go. Just quickly loading in. So yeah, we've seen the very, very strong comeback from Memestorm so far. After a bit of a shaky start, losing those and Vayner, but definitely coming back, stopping the early aggression and really just outvaluing opponents while gaining a head on the board, a very hard position to be in. So we haven't really seen a lot of close games recently. We will see now Vitruvian versus Songhai. Kamatella trying again on that Vitruvian. And now versing Zuchas, very famous for his Songhai, makes a lot of articles, very active within the community. I'm sure a lot of you guys know him. Very, very strong spell high player, and we do see his spell coming out. Interesting inclusion already of Blood Rage Mask, a card that has definitely fallen out a lot after the change to the card draw mechanic. Drawing 1 card a turn now means that your cards that you play have to be a lot more significant. This card can often only deal 2 or 3 damage for 1 mana straight to the face. It's not very significant, but we do see it. Interesting choice, though it also did get buffed, as did all the Spell Synergy cards, by the ability of Bloodborne spells to generate free spells throughout the game. But Vitruvian is a very strong deck, and if it can get off to some early aggression, it can definitely threaten to run away with the game. Now we do see a Pyromancer, which can be one of the strongest turn 1 plays in the game, but unfortunately there is the Phoenix Fire in hand, so that is very unlikely to live. I do not expect Zuchas to let that live. It will mainly a question of, does he replace a card here? I imagine he... Okay, it looks like he wants to basically keep his general out of the center. he wants to threaten to ramp up into 5 mana. He has a 5-drop in hand. So he's choosing to do it this way because he doesn't want to have to play this here, let the general attacker for free if he wants to move on to 5 mana next turn. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. And he doesn't really need the Mana Vortex. He doesn't have any more spells he needs to ramp into, so just cycling that Mana Vortex. Mana Vortex, if you already have a play, it's never going to be a negative thing to replace. Sometimes you could have got more value out of it, but the fact that it replaces itself makes it a very, very strong card, as long as it doesn't stop you from having plays when you draw it. So, K Martello looking like he's potentially either got an answer to this Chakra Avatar, or he's going to let his opponent ramp it to 5 mana. Okay, so the fact that he didn't have a minion to play, that he could play aggressive, obviously can't play the Pyromancer on a mana tile, means there was basically no way he was going to deny this 5 mana play, but we will see the Firestarter out, which will also allow maybe the use of Juxtaposition to generate a free 1/1 and allow the Pyromancer to be killed. Very, very strong play for Zuchus here, and quite unlikely that Vitruvian can deal 3/5 very effectively. Only potential cards is something like maybe even a Dancing Blaze, but which can be played around. You know, Rushars plus something else, even just the Hero player plus Fire plays Obelisk. But definitely not the easiest thing. Vitruvian doesn't have a lot of single card answers that are very popular in meta. Okay, so we're definitely going to see that play. It will be actually quite interesting. Well, not really. He will just trade in his general. I pretty much expect that the 1/1 will run in. There's a tiny chance that it doesn't run in, but Zuchus can clear the board either way. So in order to maximize damage, he's going to want to send the 1/1 in and trade with the general. He is definitely going to be the beatdown in this matchup, so he's happy to take any chance he can to trade generals, and not taking that extra 1 health for no, for 1 less damage. Okay, choosing not to trade the 1/2 in. No real need there. His opponent is, in a large number of lines, is going to want to use his general to kill that 3/5 and finish it off. So leaving that 1/2 alive is completely fine. You don't really care if it gets removed. It's only 1 damage. Really, no reason not to, unless you're worried about Star's Fury, which in this case is really not a problem at all. And so we will see the Wind Shroud around. Fireblaze Obelisk could allow the 3/5 to be killed. A Dunecaster would allow it to be traded for free. Okay, we won't see that at the moment. Okay, so killing off the 1/2. Maybe a Dunecaster First Wish would be able to kill it. Even a second Dunecaster. Okay, so the double Dunecaster comes down, which is quite a strong tempo swing. After he did get behind by a fair bit, he's now able to develop a very strong 6/6 rush minion, 2/2/1s, and he's still going to have a 6/3 left on board. So Zuchus, he had a very nice early start, but that swing turn with the Dervishes is definitely going to be pretty strong. He can start clearing off these 2/1s, and these Land Foxes will threaten to make Phoenix Fighters that can deal with the 6/3 pretty effectively. Choosing to replace the second Land Fox, just deciding it's way too slow, and he is rewarded for it, drawing into a Phoenix Fire, able to very efficiently deal with that 6/3, and he will still have mana left over to make a Land Fox. Now, this is a very interesting part of the game, because I don't think it's established who will be the control deck in this game. We don't know the full extent of Zuchus' list. Spellhides don't run a lot of late game, but they can definitely outvalue their opponents if they are able to get those Heaven's Eclipse. Same thing with Vitruvian. Vitruvian can have late game with Amaya Healer, Dominate Wills, but we don't know what they're running. Typically a little bit more late game, but if Vitruvian is low on cards, it's definitely an option, and these Land Foxes are going to start generating a lot of value. Basically, if another Dispel can be found. Even if Dispel is found, if this game evolves into a value game, that Dispel is not necessarily great. Now, not sure about this. I believe Teleport does definitely still work with the Sand Trap, allowing himself into range. So this Blood spell can be used to still generate a Phoenix Fire, which will kill off this 4-3. Definitely an oversight, I believe. Unless, I could be wrong, but I'm 90% sure that this can be used. And now, looking very strong for Zooches. Interesting question. Healing Mystic is definitely pretty decent here. His opponent's definitely trying to rush him down, but it's a very low impact card. Mana wise, it's completely fine. A 2-3 for 2 plus a good effect is very, very strong. But as a card, it does very little by itself, and now with only 2 cards in hand, there's definitely the question of whether you keep it. It's no longer an automatic decision of, I need some health, I have 2 mana left over, why wouldn't I keep it? So we will see that teleport coming down, as I said, and another Lantern Fox comes down. And now he's deciding on that replace. I think if you don't keep the Healing Mystic, then and you're worried about your health, you can simply move back here, play the Lantern Fox, and now you're just protected from a general hit. I think Zooch is evaluated. I apparently only has 2 cards in hand. I'm still at 15 life, and I have Lantern Foxes which can close out a game very, very fast. I don't really need to worry about dying. I don't need to play safe for my general, but he wants that Healing Mystic just in case. So there's also this kind of thinking where he's so far ahead, he doesn't need to worry too much about getting enough value. He has his Land Foxes, he just needs to be safe. Something like an Amaya healer could be very, very tricky if he doesn't have more healing, because he will be put down to 8 life if his opponent played an Amaya and hit him, and then the Amaya had to go off. So a little bit of assurance against being run down, but as we do see, very, very pretty slow turn for this. That 3-2 Dervish isn't really doing much, and we do see a lot of damage coming out of Carlios with simply just a Lantern Fox and a general hit. That is already 7 damage, plus that teleport is up, so that's another 9, another 12, 15 damage, I believe, if I'm counting correctly. A very, very strong start. I imagine he will definitely blink in. The question is, does he play does he trade into this Fireblaze Obelisk? He can do it just by attacking all 3 in, and then he can have 2 Phoenix Fires. Oh, only once. Sorry. No, he will have to. I mean, I think he definitely has to probably attack into the general, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't need those Phoenix Fires immediately. Just choosing to control the board. Playing around Stars Fury as well. That is one of the ways for a Vitruvian deck to suddenly generate a lot of value. Otherwise, typically Vitruvian has a lot of cards that can do damage, but not a lot of cards that can deal more damage than their mana cost. Stars Fury is basically one of the only ones that can do that. So definitely fine to play around like that. And because this can't move, there's no real need to try and keep him in this side of the board. He has no problem with his opponent running up this way. So we will see. Choosing to go for a more value-oriented play and keep board presence, because he's not really in a position he can rush down his opponent, and without a Maya, it's always very, very risky to go all in on that kind of play. Now, I'm honestly not convinced on this positioning. I think the Amaya definitely could have came in here. Now it gives a free trade with the Lantern Fox to come in, Phoenix Fire it, and suddenly the Lantern Fox has killed this Amaya on its own, when without the Blood spell, no ability to move, it would have, basically done nothing unless there was a teleport in hand. So I think that was possibly a mistake. It also now allows this 2-1 to trade in for free. We saw something like a Killing Edge that could also potentially punish it. Yeah, it's definitely not the best positioning, unless I'm missing something, but I don't think so. So Heaven's Eclipse will come down, and it looks like Zooch is now equipped to play the long game as well as start to chip away at his opponent. And that Bear Seal is huge. He could actually choose to trade in the 2-2 first, get that guaranteed Phoenix Fire, but he's decided I can get more value out of this at some point with that 2 damage plus that Phoenix Fire, because his opponent's really never going to hit into it. If he has teleports in his deck, he has another Heavenly Eclipse, he can probably find one if he wants to. He's decided he can get value out at a later stage. With that Spiral Technique in hand, plus a Saber Spine, he's throwing a ton of damage. There's no way for his opponent to kill him next turn, and he's getting close to just killing him with spell damage alone. So So very, very strong position, and that juxtaposition is very, very likely going to close out the game, just simply because his opponent now can't play a Meziljie healer. Otherwise, he's basically going to kill him with spell damage, plus just a general hit. Without that Meziljie healer to protect from that, it's basically game over now with that juxtaposition. So we do see Osirus come down on board. Windshroud will create another Phoenix Fire. He already knows about 8 damage in hand. He already knows about 8 damage, if including the 2 Phoenix Fires that he knows about, plus a general hit. And I'm not sure what the logic behind that ever is. He obviously just hasn't been keeping track. He knows the 2 Phoenix Fires would be there, and that would be lethal on board. Just choosing to show off a little bit with that juxtaposition, but because of that attack with the Dervish, there was guaranteed lethal. We already knew Zuch just had a ton of damage in hand. I'm sure Memestorm knew that as well. Pretty hard for a spell high opponent not to be able to kill them there. Alright, so we can do this spiral technique. A little bit of BM from Zuch's, just showing off how much damage he had. And that will be Game 7 going to... Off to a bit of a shaky start. They were 0-2 down at the start, but they've won 5 consecutive games. Very strong performance from Zuch there, showing off the power of that spell high deck. And not only did he he lost tempo after a really strong start, and then he was able to outvalue his opponent, deal with his opponent's threats, and then in the end, that pressure from those Land Foxes just came up way too much. Unfortunately, the Vitruvian had to use a early Siphon Soul on a Shakri avatar that could have been safe for those Land Foxes. It may not have made a difference, but also showing why Sand Trap is not a great card against Songhai. Lots of teleportation effects around, which definitely makes that card just a little bit weaker. Okay, so we will get into Game 8. Memestorm only needs one more win with Vayner, whereas JDAcademy still has 4 factions available. Still that Xerix and Lion are available, so if they choose to play one of them, that's definitely somewhere where they can pick up a win. But we will quickly get into game and we will see. Okay, so Zuch's will be playing again, and he will be playing the same person, K Mortella, once again on Vitruvian. So let us see if Vitruvian can get a bit of redemption, or if Zuch will be too good and close out the game for Memestorm. Now, Vayner, typically a faction with lots of Dispel, lots of removal. We do see that Kara, definitely a very late game deck. So I think it will be, can Vitruvian put out more threats than Zuch's can deal with, because Vitruvian's threats, especially the Orbalisk, but including stuff like Pyromancers, generate a ton of value if left alone and left undispelled. But Vayner is definitely a faction pretty good at dealing with them. We do see a hand without Dispel, pretty mid-rangey hand, so no immediate answer apart from that Cryogenesis. I do imagine Zuch's will probably use it this turn, but he may want to replace a card. We will see. Does not look like he's choosing to do so. Okay, so maybe the Healing Mystic. That basically rules out all the other plays, which is a bit interesting. I think if he's not going to keep the Healing Mystic, then he is probably just going to consider replacing whatever comes out of the Cryogenesis. I imagine something like a Snow Chaser, maybe one of Dragon Lord. Okay, a Crystal Cloaker. He is going to choose to replace that. I definitely agree with that. An Infiltrate minions going second is definitely a lot weaker, and against a more aggressive tempo-based deck, you really can't, just believe that you'll easily gun to the opponent's side. They're definitely going to be the one dictating the play. So we see a very mid-rangey hand, and a Dispel does come in, and we already see a Ephemeral Shroud. Now, Zuch's already has access to Chromatic Cold. I imagine he's still running 3, but just the fact that it's a minion is very strong in Kara, and allows him to have additional Dispels. Now, the Mogwai may come out here. I imagine it will. Where is he playing it? This is the these two spots are the ones that are safe from the general attacks, just on board. which is definitely quite strong. He can also choose to just deny the mana tile. His opponent definitely does have potential to use both mana tiles next turn because of the ability to run down and also play a minion up here. What this does mean though is Mogwai, if it's up here, a very good chance that the opponent general, well, actually looking at things, it's not so clear. He may still be able to survive the opponent's general plus a Wind Shroud, just because this Obelisk is quite awkward in blocking off general. Very interesting decision, choosing to play it in here instead. This does mean that it's also still quite awkward to get to this Mogwai because of this Obelisk, and he has the ability to move on to it next turn. So we will see if a tempo move can punish this, and if Camel can effectively use both mana tiles. It does look quite unlikely unless he goes double 2-drop, but he also has that Bloodborne spell available this turn, which can kill off that 2/2 for free. Sound Trap does come down onto Mogwai, which will basically nullify it for the meantime, but still a bit of a zoning tool around this mana tile. Definitely easier for Lucius to use it now because his opponent doesn't want to give him free value to this 2/3 that's meant to be dealt with by playing a minion on there, so it's definitely a little bit more awkward. And there is a Hearth Sister in hand, so this Mogwai is not done for good. Okay, so we do see Camel putting on the aggression, playing a Dunecaster plus that Bloodborne spell. Unfortunately for him, Zuch has a ton of cards that are very good at dealing with an aggressive deck. Plenty of options here. He may choose to go for a Dancing Blades, or just simply a 4/7 Provoke. I think he's going for the Provoke here. It allows him to clear the board very easily. No need to go cute with the Dancing Blades. Get some value out of the Shroud immediately and drop a 4/7 Provoke in his opponent's face. Very strong play. And he wants to play it on his opponent's side of the board. He doesn't want to allow something like a Snow Chaser to even be in range. Also, he wants to keep his opponent on his side of the board, make sure the Snow Chaser is in range. Any type of infiltrate minion you may be running. I see there's a lot of debate between Cloaker and Snow Chaser. Cloaker, I believe, is probably better in a Kara list just because it benefits from the stats more. The difference between a 3/4 and a 3/2 is pretty strong. Definitely dying at one hit with the Snow Chaser is not as good, but it does allow that Bloodborne spell to be used a lot more. Okay, so as we were talking about that, we do see the Hexblade come out of a Vitruvian player, which is, I feel it's a little bit counterproductive, and it makes his last play a little bit more questionable. Now, he may have had a pretty poor hand, but he, basically went aggressive, and he got nothing out of his cards. Now he's low on cards, and he switched to a Hexblade, which promotes a much more aggressive style of play. But, he's already wasted his cards going pretty aggressive, so it's a little bit counterproductive. And definitely, going to be harder, but he does have some, potential plays. Stuff like a Maya Healer can be pretty good. Interesting, he may choose to Hearth Sister the Mogwai. Yep, so he wants to get some value out of the Mogwai, and we'll let him clear this artifact for free. So very nice play there, and he can drop a Primus Shieldmaster. Very nice play from Zuchas, keeping control of the board, and preserving his life when he can. He's in a very strong situation. He's outvaluing his opponent pretty hard. Card-wise, he has 2 minions on board, plus 3 in hand. We'll go up to 4. Looking very strong card-wise. Plus, that Kara ability is so strong when you can keep a decent amount of minions in hand. They're all just going to outvalue your opponent and just create so much late game pressure. And we do see the next turn, the Bloodborne spell will be ready to go once again. Something Kara wants to do nearly every time it's up, unless it really has to play on curve. So Vitruvian down to 3 already. Something key to note is that that Hearth Sister being used did mean that Zuchas was decently open to a Maya Healer. Unfortunately for the Vitruvian player, he does not get he does not have one, and he also misses on his Bloodborne spell. That was a 50-50. He could have chosen to play it. Well, I guess it depends on what you really want to do. If you really want to use that Bloodborne spell to hit face, then that was the better play, because it means there's 50-50 hitting face. If he just wants it to be useful, then if he plays it second, after this, they can guarantee it can at least hit here, but now there's only a 33% chance that you get to hit face. And I think with the low cards in hand, versing that Kara, he was getting pretty desperate. He went for the highest chance to hit face, hoping that he can finish off the game, you know, just by doing a lot of damage to his opponent's face, playing a couple of rush minions and a Maya healer. Pray he doesn't have an answer. But we do see that basically Zooch is just running away with the game. All these opening gambit minions that are balanced around dying to one hit, suddenly, you know, 3 health, which is a massive difference. The difference between 3 health and 4 health is not that massive, but 2 health and 3 health is so massive. It means an extra hit against the general. The general's not cleaning it up for free, and now JDAcademy are looking in a very tough spot. This is a game they have to win to stay in the Team Wars match for round 1. And Zooch is in a very strong position. Something like Star's Fury, probably not even enough to save him. I can't really think of a lot. It would basically have to be in his eyes and a Maya healer, but as we do see, Zooch has that spell, just drawing even more potential answers. And we saw last game that, well, not last game, last turn, sorry, that Vitruvian doesn't have it. Equipping a Wildfire Unk. Not really sure why we could be Unk. I guess this is basically just giving up. He is dead on board. And we will see Zooch is taking over, and you know, very obviously lethal on board. We will see Memestorm takes week 1, match 2. There was 2 matches of the first week of Team Wars. Up to a very nice start. Started off a little bit shaky with that 2 early to JDAcademy, but ever since then, very strong games. And coming back for the 6-0 reverse sweep, and we will see that victory. Okay, so that will be it for today. If you want to check out the Team Wars, I do encourage you to do so. It is on Sunday nights for most people. You can check it out, and maybe find yourself a team. I know a lot of teams have to use fill-ins quite consistently. If you want to compete, it's very good. You only have to really play 1 or 2 games a night, especially if you win. So definitely something I encourage you to be involved with. I believe Envy did stream a few of the games, so if you want to check out some more of those games, check them out. But these ones are mostly not covered on stream. So I might do this kind of thing a little bit more often. I'm hoping to do some more casting in the future, trying to organise a few things with some few people. If you have any tournaments, even if it's a small event, I really don't mind. You know, just get in contact with me. I'm really just looking for experience. And if you have any feedback for me, it is greatly appreciated. It's not too easy talking for an hour and a half by myself, trying to accommodate games I already know the result to, especially one-sided. But if you have any feedback, it's greatly appreciated. If you want to see more of this type of videos, gameplay videos, and discussion videos, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.